Welcome to the ROI Masterclass, the podcast where vision meets strategy and bold moves create measurable results. I'm Liat Siegel, interior designer and ROI strategist with 17 years of experience. I help businesses transform properties and ideas into high-performing assets. This show is specifically for real estate investors, hospitality operators, and boutique developers who aren't afraid to take risks, challenge the status quo, and demand a return on every decision they make. Each and every week, we talk with innovators and leaders across industries about the strategies and the insights and really all the unconventional thinking that turns potential into profit every single time. If you believe that smart design, decisive leadership, and strategic risk are the keys to real ROI, you're in the exact right place. Let's dive in. Today's guest, Bill Short, is the president and CEO of Red Elk Land Company, a leading regional commercial real estate firm specializing in land and redevelopment opportunities across Florida, Mississippi, and Kansas. For more than 20 years, Bill has helped private and institutional clients transform raw land and overlooked properties into thriving developments, guiding them from big picture vision to the closing table. With a knack for uncovering potential where others see obstacles, he brings clarity to complex deals, creates strategies that unlock value, and keeps projects charging toward the goal, a successful finish. Thank you so much for being with us, Bill. I'm so looking forward to our conversation today.
No, I really appreciate you for having me. You know, when you read that off, it always surprises me because I'm like, wow, that sounds really important. But, you know, I may be a little self-deprecating in that way, but I appreciate you for having me. And yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. So tell us about how you got into what you're doing today and what you love so much about it.
Well, the short answer is I got into it by complete accident. You know, I don't know whether other people feel that way or not, but it's somewhat serendipitous. And then that happy little accident actually turned into something that I really liked, or happened to be something that I really liked. I grew up in the Midwest in Kansas, actually, small town. You know, small town Kansas, you're generally one of a couple things. You're a preacher, teacher, doctor, lawyer. You know, you work in a local industry. You're a farmer. I mean, I was a big part of the industry. So I didn't even really know what the land business truly was, but by a roundabout way, I moved to Florida and met a guy that was in the land business, and I happened to be a diversion of a path of an aviation path I was on at the time. And as I was on that aviation path, going to be an airline pilot, I realized that there's other ways to make a living, and I met a guy in the land business, and I didn't really think of myself in the land business when you're farming in Kansas. I mean, you know, land at that point can be just a tool and a mechanism in which to build a business on. But I mean, farmers are all, whether they like it or not, are almost all in the land business of some capacity, form or another, whether they own, they lease, or whatever. So I was introduced to somebody that was in the land business and happened to really like it. Liked what he did, liked what I saw, and one of the things that I really liked the most about it is the type of people that we work with. I mean, I can't say it enough. I just like the people at the end of the day, and I can't imagine working with landowners, land buyers, home builders, developers of all types, and they happen to be, you know, people that I can relate to somewhat naturally with, at least I believe. So it's again, complete accident. Love the people. It happened to work out, and you know, so far it's been working out for 20 years. So, you know, I can't imagine myself doing anything else, really.
And that's something we were talking about in the beginning of the show, that what Hollywood makes the real estate industry look like is completely different than what it actually is. And, you know, it's really about people and being surrounded by other people who are like-minded. Like, I get lit up when I speak to other entrepreneurs or, you know, folks in real estate in a different way than when I do residential projects, because I feel that from the financial and the ROI perspective, we understand each other. We're speaking the same language. And so especially when those people are down to earth and you can just have a conversation with them, it's so much easier and so much more enjoyable to do the work that we do. It's not always easy to do the work we do, but it makes it so much more enjoyable when you have people like that around you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it sounds kind of funny or hocus pocusy or touchy feely, but it really engages another side of the brain, depending on what type of person and where they're at. I mean, we've got to be, at least in our industry, I'm a big believer in being a chameleon, and you got to understand somebody's background. You got to meet them where they're at. I can't take a farmer who's only farmed what he's farmed and, you know, might have bought a piece or two here and then start talking to him like I would talk to a developer. I mean, it would just get lost in translation so quick. And so how you relate to those people, how you work with them. I mentioned earlier, I come from an aviation background. So, I mean, how I teach, work, and I mean, I've worked with folks that have come off out of the Navy and out of the military as F-18 pilots and just want to become a weekend flyer. That's a whole different skill set and how I relate and talk to them versus somebody that's 15 or 16 years old. And I know this is a little drastic of a scenario, but the 15 or 16-year-old student pilot that's trying to get his Boy Scout badge. I mean, it's exciting. It's invigorating. If you can't tell, by the tonality and my uptick in my energy and my voice, each one of those is exciting in its own little way. And we all are unique. That's what really makes me coming back to the business. I mean, no 2 days are the same. And in some ways, some people in some ways are harder to relate to than others. And, that also presents a unique set of challenges, which I like. It's that level of challenge of non-uniqueness, or of being unique, I should say. Unique projects, unique properties. That's what keeps, and unique people at the end of the day. That's really what keeps me coming back to it. If we were all the same, and every property was the same, we would all be bored as a society to tears. It just wouldn't work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you ever find yourself in a situation speaking to farmers where they don't want to give up their land and where they've had it for generations, and now it's going to become a development or something like that? What do you say to them?
My first response to that question would be is if they don't want to sell it and they want to hang on to it for many generations, then that's what they should do. And sometimes it's finding and helping. Sometimes what we do, and sometimes it's non-revenue generating, but I think it's good for humanity. I think it's good for the community, is helping people hang on to their land for as long as they want to hang on to it. In the off chance that they want to sell it, then we're there for them. I mean, we're always going to be there for them in some way, fashion, form, or another. But if that's what they want to do, then we can help provide them a path to do that. And sometimes that is introducing them to someone other than ourselves. Sometimes that is making them think about something they might not have thought about in the past. I get that. It's funny when I call somebody or meet a landowner for their first time and they find out what we do. And one of the first few things they say is, I'm not interested in selling. Well, no kidding, you're not. If you would have been interested in selling, you would have probably already done it already or have taken action towards that. So there's many different reasons why people sell. Many different reasons why people either want to sell, don't want to sell. And it's really uncovering those reasons. And then it doesn't matter what my reasons are or what I think they should do. It really matters what their reasons are, because that's their reality. That's their truth. And it might not meet my reality or my truth, or it might not meet the market's reality or the market's truth, or it might seem completely illogical, but it doesn't matter. It's their truth. Keeping that in mind. It's one time I remember as a young guy or a younger person, I was getting frustrated. I'm like, I can't believe this guy doesn't want to sell. Like, it's great time, great market. I mean, he's got a killer project. He's got a killer property. I mean, he's probably never seen numbers this size in his life. I mean, we're talking multi-million dollars. I mean, everybody around him has sold. He's got the hole in the donut of this development. Development's all around him. And he's got this phenomenal piece of a couple hundred acres just in the middle. I mean, it's a gold mine. Why wouldn't he want to sell? And a mentor of mine said, it doesn't matter. His reasons aren't wrong. They're just not your reasons. So I got to keep that in mind when I'm talking to someone like that. That's sometimes the family has owned it since civilization, since everything was surveyed and deeded. They've owned it that long sometimes. And I know I'm kind of long-winded here, but that's really, at the end of the day, is wherever their goals are, is that's what they should stick with. One reason they might want to sell, not that everybody does, is, maybe those kids are, maybe their next of kin, the heirs, the next generation, maybe they're going to fight over it and they don't want to fight over it. Maybe there's some estate planning they want to do. Maybe they want to put kids through college, grandkids through college. What does selling the real estate, does that enhance their life? Does it better their life? Or is it something that pulls them down? And that's really what I'm listening for, is I'm listening for those types of things when I'm talking to somebody. So more often than not, they don't want to sell. More often than not, they won't sell. And guess what? That's okay. I only have so many hours in a day. I can't work with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to be selective with who we work with, not just to protect our energy, but also to be able to be of the highest level of service. There are many schools of thought that are contrary to what you shared, that, people will say, oh, I'm the expert. I'm going to tell you what's the right.
Gosh.
And
Yeah.
I love that approach that you take, that, to hold space for what they want. We do the same thing in terms of design, where we never push a style on a client. We have this kind of discovery method, this system that we use in order to do a deep dive and say, pull it out of them, be detectives and figure out, the why behind the why, and figure out what's their style and what's their functional need within the space. So I love that you take that to heart. You take a human approach to what you do. which is, it's very refreshing to hear that perspective from you.
I mean, if we misguide our clients, you and me both, in our respective business, if we misguide our clients into something that is self-serving into us, one, it's going to be an uphill battle. Two, it's going to be, in my opinion, somewhat, define it how you want, but malpractice of what we do, because we have now pushed them in a direction that they don't want to go. And I don't mind getting them thinking, and maybe there's some things they want to think. Maybe there's some outside opinions, or maybe just a fresh set of eyes, and there's some things they want to think about. But it doesn't, I got to take myself out of the room and say, if I am in their shoes, if I am if I'm standing in their shoes, or their moccasins, some people will say, if I'm standing in their shoes, what would be in their best interest in this situation? And more often than not, it's not selling. There may be some strategic planning they can do for when that right time comes, whatever that right time may be.
What are you seeing in terms of land development? Like, what are the trends? I know, especially in Florida, there's a lot of master plan developments happening, and a lot of farms becoming, communities. Does that take away from farming infrastructure? How have you seen that evolve? And is it a good trend that we're seeing?
Is it a good trend or not? I don't know. And unfortunately, we won't know probably until it's too late. We do see that trend a lot. And one of the things that, and it just dawned on me, I learn something new in this business every day, even though has been sitting right in front of my eyes. As master plan development communities encroach on farms, one of the things that it does to the remaining farms is it enhances their land value. And if it enhances their land value, now it enhances their borrowing capacity. And if it enhances their borrowing capacity, then they can grow their farm. And so if they can grow their farm, then they can go buy other farms. Or expand the current farm. Maybe it's not that location, but maybe it's in a slightly different location. I come from a farming background. I'm pro farmer all day long. I am pro agriculture to its T, even though I sell farmland and a lot of it for development, so long as it's serving the client and serving the goal of their client. As a country or as a globe, is diminishing farmland a good thing? I don't know. Good news is it doesn't matter what I think at the end of the day, because I can only do me here. But it is interesting, and I think it'll be an interesting trend. I do think farming has drastically changed over the last 100 years. Kansas was settled by westward expansion, and one of the things they did was they homesteading. We'll give you the land for free if you live on it for 5 years. If you gave one farmer, and so I think it was about 160 acres, I believe what it was, a quarter section. So if you gave 106, I think that's what it was. Don't quote me on it. I used to have that committed to memory. My Kansas history teacher will shoot me right now. That's 4 farmers per square mile, basically, let's call it. If you did that today, those 4 farmers would go broke. So the nature of because they need to farm a lot more acreage, and with the advent of equipment and production farming, combines, tractors, the farming industry has changed drastically over between a team of horses and a plow to what we've got today with the tractor. So I think it'll be interesting over the next 100 years what we see in the farming business and how it will change yet again. I would imagine it will probably become, again, more efficient. Maybe we'll take less land. Maybe there's land that's, I guess you'd say, underproduced in today's world. Maybe it's a timber farm where the trees sit on the land for 25 years and it becomes row crops, and we put the timber farm somewhere else. There's going to be some repositioning because of it. And me as an outdoorsman, a hunter or a fisherman, last thing I want to do is see more land gobbled up for development. And that's one of the reasons why I think redevelopment, of course, is so important in our business and holds dear to our heart.
Absolutely. I know that in New York, Long Island, Brooklyn had farms not long ago when my father-in-law was a boy. And that it's concrete jungle now entirely.
No one thinks of New Jersey as the Garden State like they once did. I still do. It's still a nickname, but it's becoming less of a Garden State every day, every year.
Absolutely. Also, the pollution, like when you drive through New Jersey, there's smokestacks, everywhere. And it's very developed. And so I think that there is a huge level of overdevelopment, and it takes people, innovators who are thinking about the development of the land and the impact and doing it with heart, because there is an ROI in strategically doing it so that we can bring communities together. And there is in terms of fresh produce, I can say even in New York, and I'm more upstate at this point, it's still harder to access fresh fruit and veggies that I'm not just going to the local store to get, that have been sitting on the shelves or in transportation. And so I think there's a lot to be said for how we develop land and, allowing the farming community to still maintain, and maybe through more government support, to support the farmers so that they can really produce and provide for our communities fresh produce and sustenance.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. I mean, one of the number one things my parents like to do when they come to Florida, especially in the wintertime, most so in the wintertime, is they like to they just go, hey, are you going to the grocery store? Can I go? One of the reasons why that is, and I giggle like a little schoolgirl, but one of the reasons why that is because it's strawberry season. I mean, the strawberries are no fresher. I mean, they come from a 30, 40 mile radius here in Florida at any given point in time. And I got to agree with them. I mean, something we really take for granted, and I know that's somewhat seasonal. In the summertime, the fruits and vegetables are very fresh, even in a state like that. But it is definitely interesting to how we see that and where that will go. And it's a collective effort. I mean, it really is, and how that all works. So I'll be interested to see, over the long term where that goes. I don't think the number one threat, believe it or not, of agricultural is development. I think the number one threat, and I don't know what the number one threat is, but there's a lot of factors. Like, for instance, we've had here in Florida with orange groves. I mean, orange groves have been taken out by a lot of disease. And so, I think there's a ton of studies on how, we eradicate said diseases and fight against it and everything. So, it's a swirling constellation of factors, but I will say it's not development that is the number one threat to Florida or just agriculture as a whole. I mean, we still have a ton of land left and we'll have for a long, long time. And if we don't, we'll probably end up taking some of these developments and turning them back to agricultural maybe at some point. I mean, that's kind of a far out mindset to really even think about, in my opinion, but anything could happen, but that could potentially happen.
Yeah. In some dystopian world, far into the future, if we had a crystal ball, all those properties that didn't have a property improvement plan.
I mean, we have seen developments. We have seen developments that were conceived in the 1920s, never really come to fruition. You'll be walking along in the woods somewhere, and all of a sudden there'll be a fire hydrant.
Oh my gosh!
So I mean, it does happen.
Well, at least we have water on the land.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
That's amazing. So throughout your journey, have you come across any challenges that you never thought would have happened? Like, if you had looked back, like, for instance, if I knew the challenges of construction when I got started, then I would have approached things a lot differently. Looking back, is there anything that you could look back and pinpoint and say, wow, that was a challenge and I've grown from that and learned a lot?
The hard part in answering this question is going to try to decipher which challenge that is and how to boil it down in the simplest and most concise way. One of the challenges, I am not originally from Florida. I've been here 20 years. I moved here after college. There are folks that have been here for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 generations. Not necessarily in the real estate industry, but just as a Florida generational person. And what I found is that we're somewhat all transplants. I mean, even though I grew up in Kansas, when you look at our family history, we'd been there for 3 generations. And the generations before that was Oklahoma, and that was Arkansas. It was, through Appalachia. And I could probably, if I spent enough time, trace us all the way back to Ellis Island. But, we're all in a period of the last 100 or 150 years, in my opinion. A lot of us are all transplants to some degree. So, I would say not having maybe that perception of being in Florida generationally has presented some sort of a challenge. It's obviously not slowed me down. I've been able to get through it. When I moved, just for instance, when I moved to Tampa, I didn't know a single person. I knew the guy that brought me on board and wanted me to help him out in his business. And that was a bit, I went and got my real estate license, and I had to make a friend, and I found that just serendipitously, he and I were about the same age, about the same stage in our life. And he invited me to a party or an event, and then I went to that. So, over a short period of time, I was able to, build out a network. Now it's funny, people that know me are like, man, I can't go anywhere hardly in the world and you not know somebody. That's a little bit nuts. But is that my best challenge? I don't know yet. It
is a challenge. It is a challenge to get started and not have roots. I'm from Canada originally, and I didn't have any really family here when I started my business. I didn't have friends or anybody to connect with. And starting a business in that landscape when everybody else had a connection was really, really challenging. Putting out a proposal and then saying, oh, somebody already won that bid because this connection or that connection or what, it was a lot harder for me. So I think I would
agree with you there.
Yeah, it takes a lot more grit and hustle to keep showing up and saying, well, even though I got the no, I'm going to continue forward with it.
Yeah. Well, how did you get to know the guy or the person, you ended up working with? Well, our grandparents used to be, schoolmates, and you're like, well, shoot, how do I compete with that? Or my parents used to be business partners together, or they went to the same church. I mean, gosh, I've heard it all. Every situation, especially if we're not selected, and we're not going to get selected on the majority of them. I get no for a living. I mean, it's
Right.
just the nature of our business. I mean, it's okay. And I encourage it. The faster I get to a no is the faster I can get to somebody else that can say a yes. And so, but I always like to learn from those experiences and say, okay, well, nothing personal here. I get it, but I don't ask it in this terms, but why not me is what I ask myself, what did I miss, and if they have 3 generations of connections, it's going to be hard for a guy like myself and yourself to compete with that. And nor should we. I mean, we all have a unique value. There are plenty of people to work with out there. I mean, I am not intimidated by any competitor, perceived competitor, because we all have our own personalities. We all have our own likeness. We all have our own experiences, and we're just all unique in that. So sometimes they might not want to work with somebody that's been here that long. They might want a fresh set of eyes. The list goes on. That's a very simple example, but I mean, there are challenges. I mean, my son asked me, he says, have you ever been afraid? And I said, oh yeah, son, I'm afraid every day. And he goes, what are you afraid of? And I said, I have to get up every day and talk to strangers. And he's like, oh, I never thought about that. So I mean, that can be a challenge right there in itself, maybe a lifelong journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're constantly growing and learning. And I think, what's the ROI of no? What's the ROI of somebody saying no to us? It's that we have to pivot and get so good at what we're doing. And it has to be so clear, the value that we bring to the table, that even if they have, and that's what's happening for me personally now, even if they have those connections, even if they, somebody lives closer and I'm further, away, they will come to me because of the value that I bring, the unique value that I bring to the table, and the way that I have positioned myself in the marketplace because of my expertise. And I think that in the beginning, it's always harder, right? Especially when you don't have those connections. But to your point, as we grow and we learn and we face the hard things, even though we're afraid and even though it's hard to show up, the transformation is that much greater.
100% agree. I mean, exposure therapy, however you want to call it, the number one way to get over something that you're afraid of is to just do more of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. In the beginning, when I was doing podcasting, I have had a couple podcasts before, and doing live streams and all that, I was terrified
I bet.
of being on camera. But the more you do it, the better it is. What are you seeing now in terms of trends within land development? What's next? What's happening? What's the next biggest thing?
So we've seen as a country, and a lot here in Florida, because we're definitely in a growth state, we really have seen a lot of development come out of the ground over the last 4 to 5, 6 years, even over the last 10 years. But definitely, let's just look back 5 years back. It's something we can catalog very quickly with a milestone of COVID. I think people are going to be saying pre and post COVID for probably the rest of our careers.
Yes, I can't tell you the number of times I've had a conversation before COVID, this happened. And the fact that it's 5 years ago seems crazy because it feels like it was literally just yesterday.
And in some ways, I think it was. I mean, it took, so we were in COVID, and the lockdowns, and, things started to kind of slowly return back to normal. We just didn't flip a switch and we all came out of our houses like Smurfs. And so, I mean, how long did COVID really last? I think it depended upon what part of the country you're in, what space you were in. Obviously, if you're in a clinical world and a doctor and in a medical field, it probably lasts longer than it did probably for somebody like myself. So, and I don't mean to digress or make this a COVID conversation, but at the same token, I do think we're going to be, let's look 5 years back. And so been a ton of development across the country, especially in the Sun Belt and the growth states, come out of the ground. And some of that has been conceived, 5 and 10 years before it even came out of the ground. I mean, we've got just here in the urban core of Tampa, and that includes, that also includes St. Pete. I mean, we've had many different flagship projects come out of the ground, districts worth, thousands of units. And these are with kind of gets the headlines. We've also had, benefited from net migration. A lot of people moving to Florida. Surprising. I mean, everybody talked about how hurricanes were going to scare people off. We didn't necessarily see it. Fourth quarter of last year was extremely slow because everybody was literally trying to rebuild their lives, and throughout most of Florida. And I'll be interested, knock on wood, to see what 2025 and 2026 bring. And so what we're seeing today is we're seeing rising interest rates, people, housing affordability, just affordability to live. I think I saw in the news, a news article the other day, I can't remember who published it, that Tampa is not well ranked right now in the cost of living index. So I think a lot of metropolitan areas are not ranked real well in cost of living index. And so some are better than others. That's hence why the ranking system exists. But in our world, in the land world, what you see coming out of the ground is maybe something we sold 3 or 4 years well before it even came out of the ground. Sometimes we sell it, they start construction, 2 or 3 months later. Just kind of depends. As a whole, we've seen, where I'm going with all this and what we're seeing today is we're seeing somewhat of a cool off. People have bought a lot. People have got a lot of things. There's a lot of things under construction. There's a little bit of a wait and see. There's some hesitation in the capital markets as well, in the wait and see world. So, I hate to say it, but a lot of our business is driven by what the capital markets feel like. I mean, a developer or a home builder or whatever could feel like it's the greatest project in the world, but if he can't raise the money or doesn't already have the money in place to go actually do and build the development, then it's not going to get done. So it's the balances, I think, in our society and in our system that really kind of help make this work. And where do we go from here? I've only seen one major recession, which was the Great Recession of 2008 in my career. I went 2000 and started my career, about a little over 20 years ago. So 405, thinking, we're all going to have 2 or 3 private jets in my name by this time, right? So I'll just have to figure out what I'm going to do with all my money in my second career. And then we saw the Great Recession of '08, and that lasted many years as well. So we're not trending. I'm not a fearmonger. I don't believe, I don't feel, I don't see that we're ever trending towards that. But I think we did forget over the last 4 to 5 years how good the market really was, what kind of a frenzy there was. And every buyer out there has been, over the last several years, been complaining about cost of land. We need the cost of land to come down. Well, one of the ways we get cost of land to come down is we got to have activity to cool off. And unfortunately, when we got to have activity to cool off for the cost of land to come down, that means people aren't able to buy as much. So it's like, yeah, I could buy more if the cost of land would come down or if some of these other construction costs would come down. But the reason why they're so high is because there's so much in demand. So they kind of come down in theory at a similar or same level. So the challenges still kind of continue to remanifest itself with these short windows of opportunity and the ups and downs of a market to really deploy and buy. And it's like I tell everybody, they said, man, I'd love to buy more. I just can't find any good deals out there. And I said, you're not going to find any good deals out there. You need to find a property that you really like, whether it's on the market or not, doesn't matter. Find one you really like and then cut the best deal you can and make it fair for both sides. We get people sometimes, we don't typically have properties that are overpriced, but somebody will come to me no matter what price it has on it and bitch about the price. I said, you're a buyer. That's what your job is to do. You're supposed to complain about the price. If you don't like the price, then make an offer. The majority of them won't, but the few that do are in a better spot than the ones that won't, even if they think it's a complete waste of time.
So what would be your number one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's looking to develop land or buy a piece of property?
I think that's it right there. That'd probably be my number one piece of advice. Find a property that fits your profile, that you really like, that checks all the boxes for you, and then figure out a way to cut the deal and, don't negate it because you don't like what you think they're going to want for it or what they say they want for it in the first conversation or what is on the marketing package as the asking price. I think that's my number one. If you're out buying and actively looking, you got to figure out a way to stay engaged, stay in the game. We've had folks tell us, look, we're not buying right now, but we're building our files. And what that means is they're tracking the market. They're tracking new projects. They're developing and building out what they've already got in the pipeline. They've got a full pipeline. That's not a bad problem to have. But they're looking for the future and they're looking for that right opportunity. And that's not everybody. That's just some folks. Some folks have voids in their pipeline and they're looking to fill it. And if you're a land seller, you're looking for that buyer or that developer that's got a void in his pipeline that's looking to fill it. You're not necessarily looking for the guy to just, build a file on it in hopes that, maybe you drop the price one day. That wouldn't be what I would want as a seller. But I think if you're a buyer, depending on whether you're actively buying or looking to actively buy in the future, those are probably my two biggest pieces of advice. The deal of the century is not going to land on your lap. It never does.
You have to go find it. Yeah.
Back to Hollywood. I mean, you got to stay active. You got to be working your network. You got to be having positive conversations, and just know that the majority of them aren't going to go anywhere. A lot of buyers tell me that, their team have quotas in place that they know they're never going to meet in today's market. Well, that's true, but it's good to have a goal.
Absolutely. So do you think that the market has slowed? And if so, how much?
Well, yeah, it definitely, there's no question. It's slowed across all sectors. Activity hasn't slowed. And what I mean by that is you look at any one successful deal and it's accumulation of many different conversations and of many different factors and activities that go into it. There is less or lack of a feeding frenzy like there once was. Obviously, if you've got a site that is extremely well located and is at Main and it checks a lot of the boxes for a lot of people, you're going to have a lot of people on it in a short amount of time. And the numbers, I mean, we're seeing values at least being offered on any one given project or property really across the board. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, so to speak, right? So yeah, it's definitely slowed, but I welcomed it. And the reason why I welcome it is because the activity at the pace we were going was just getting insane. Pace at which home builders were selling houses was crazy. Pace at which home builders then needed to backfill their pipeline, or developers was crazy. And I'm just using the home builder example in this situation. They weren't able to buy land fast enough, which means land prices start shooting up through the roof. I don't think things have not dropped off. They've not tapered downward. They have leveled off to a degree that I think is somewhat healthy. And I welcome a healthy level off. I think we all needed it.
Absolutely.
If nothing else, then to catch our breath. What are we doing here?
The rat race.
I mean, and I'm okay with the pace of the rat race. I mean, I got a lot of energy. I got a high motor. I'm good with that. But when you would evaluate a deal and you go, okay, here's what I think it's probably worth. And then it was appreciating 20, 30% year over year. And almost everything was in respect to that. I mean, home prices were appreciating, 15, rent appreciation, on all markets were. So that means construction costs is appreciating, land costs is appreciating. It's all. And sometimes the land prices were not appreciating. I mean, because they were getting absorbed by the increase in construction costs and increased in, whatever, a lot of factors that take it from land to a complete development. And if those factors are getting absorbed and have higher pressures, the land price is either going to sometimes stay the same or decrease. It's basic algebra. What is it today and what's it going to cost to get it there? And what is it going to be worth once I get it there? So, whatever's left is the land, being overly simplistic here. But, if the factors to get it there were increasing at 20% and the home price was only appreciating 10%, that doesn't mean your land is going to appreciate 10%.
Wow.
Well, I'm just using a basic mental math analogy here.
Absolutely. So if you could leave our audience with all of the wisdom that you've shared today and leave them with the impact of that wisdom that you want to make on the world, what would that be?
Find something you like, whether it's you're looking for a job or looking for a career, or whether you're looking for a space in the industry, or whether you're looking to buy or whether you're looking to sell. I think you got to really enjoy the journey. And I don't know, Lord only knows, how many faces will see this and how, they're all going to be completely unique, right? So, to find something that really addresses all of them is going to be virtually impossible. But if I had one generative statement, I'd say you have to really enjoy it, because the successes are short-lived. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love hitting home runs, but I also got to know I'm not going to hit a home run every baseball game, analogously speaking. I mean, you got to enjoy swinging the bat. And I think that's really what real estate really comes down to, is no matter where you're at. And of course, if you're a seller and you don't enjoy that, that's okay. That's where we come in and we can help make that enjoyable again, shameless plug here, and same thing on the buying side. But I think you just generally, at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy what you get, this is true. This is just a life statement. If you don't really enjoy the journey, the destination isn't probably really going to seem as worthwhile as it could be. You've got to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And that impacts everybody that we work with. It's infectious. When we love what we do and show up to it with such enthusiasm, everybody else feels that it's really infectious.
100%. Can't agree more.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure learning from you, and we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bill.